Hello and welcome to this School of Humankind live free event called From Pain and Suffering to Peace and Joy. My name is Wyndham. I am the Blueprint Coach and I am one of the heart-led members of the faculty at School of Humankind, which is a collective of amazing people from around the world who are focused on helping people live fucking glorious lives. And there are significant challenges to that in today's day and age. So welcome to today's, I guess it's a workshop. It is, by the end of today, I would like anybody who has watched this to be able to decouple pain and suffering. We talk about those as if they're synonymous with each other. They're not. To decouple them and to be able to access peace and joy more easily. As I say at the beginning of any of my talks or anything like that, I do not expect or want you to accept 100% of anything that I say just because I've said it. I want you to be discerning. I think it is a skill that we have lost to some degree. What I would ask is some of what I'm going to say may well be challenging. You may feel this uprising of resistance, and that's okay. What I would ask is, can you bridge to 10%? Is there just 10% of today that you can take away, reflect on, mull over, and maybe adopt and build into your own wonderful, unique patchwork of skills, tools, philosophies, approaches, whatever it might be? So I ask that of you, and that is all I ask of you. So today we're talking about from pain and suffering to peace and joy. And as I said, the intention for me is that you can separate pain and suffering and access peace and joy more easily. It's pretty heavy, pain and suffering. That's where we're going to spend most of our time. So before we do that, what I would like to do is help us arrive in this space. I am a trained yoga teacher as well, and it is one of the most powerful things for me when I transition from one space into another is just to take a moment to actually get myself present in the moment. So wherever you are, assuming you're not having this play in a car, don't close your eyes if you're driving, but I invite you to just take a couple of seconds, fidget around a little bit, find a position that is comfortable for you. And if you feel comfortable doing so, close your eyes. Excuse me. Not everybody feels comfortable with that. If you don't, just kind of bring them to a half focus. And we're just very quickly going to ground and we're going to breathe. So we're going to go into a breathing pattern of an inhale for 4 and an extended exhale for 8. And all I really want you to do at the moment is just notice how you are breathing as the air comes in through your nose and out through your nose. Maybe bring your awareness to your heart. Feel it beating, this remarkable, unfatigable constant in our lives. And then wherever you are with your breath, I invite you to exhale and breathe in for a 1, 2, 3, 4. Slow exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slow exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last round. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Allow your breathing to come back to normal. Give your heart one last moment of gratitude, feeling it beat. When you're ready, slowly blink your eyes open. Come back into the room. Take a moment to feel grounded. I have people in front of me, so with a show of thumbs of exactly as you used to feel, a bit better, a bit worse, how do you feel after our very short breathing? Thumbs up. Perfect. Good. That is what we want. Right. Now let's get into pain and suffering. So, what I really want to do is start to offer some tools. Now, I work with the 246 framework with my clients. It's 2 beliefs, it's 4 pillars, it is 6 essential elements. And one of the essential elements is awareness. So much of our life is automatic. We react instead of respond. We have these truths and beliefs studied through our mind and through our life that they have a trigger and a reaction. And there's no thinking that goes on. These are embedded in us when we're younger. And until we challenge them, they shape our lives. So we're going to be practicing awareness. We're going to be practicing discernment. All of that automation, how much of it is truly ours? How much of it is based on our lived experience? That's where I want us all to get. We're basing our truths and our beliefs on our lived experience, not on what somebody else has given us. So we're going to break the bond between pain and suffering. So let's look at the component parts. Let's bring our awareness to those 2 very distinct things. Let's look at pain. What is pain? Where do we feel pain? So for me, pain is either physical or it's emotional, psychological, emotional, those kind of things. It's either a tangible body pain or it is an emotional pain. But what is pain? What is it for? What's its purpose? So I spend a lot of time where I live. I'm very fortunate. I live near woods. I go out running. And for some reason, I have like crystal ankles. I don't know why they're so delicate, but they are. I roll them all of the time. And in the moment I roll them, there is a stabbing, piercing pain. And my mind will kick in and it will say, you should go home. You should end this silliness, go home, sit down, have a cup of tea. But I am the executive function here. It is not my pain. It is not my mind kicking in saying, run home, go home, don't do this thing, it's painful. So I then get to contextualize my pain. I get to assess it. I get to rate it. Is this a very bad pain? Have I done serious damage? No, it's quite painful, but maybe I'll walk on because I have a bigger plan that requires me to run more. So I'll walk a little bit longer. So the pain we feel is really just information. Now, that can be challenging. It's just information. I don't mean that in a dismissive way. I don't mean it, we shouldn't pay attention to it. But the point I'm making is it is information for us to do something with, not just to react and automatically implement something as a result of it. Now, that's physical pain. Emotional pain, I've come to believe, is the same. It is simply information. What are we going to do with that information? What is it trying to tell us? Because for me, it's always a guide. Now, is it guiding me to something or is it guiding me away from something? The other thing to really bear in mind is we can't avoid pain. Pain is a fundamental part of being human. If we try to insulate ourselves from experiencing pain, all we are really doing is insulating ourselves from experiencing life. It is going to hurt physically, emotionally. That is part of this incredible journey of being a human being. So the pain bit, well, let's just accept that there will be pain. And there's very little we can do about it. Even if we manage our lives as closely as we possibly can, pain is going to be a part of our life. To wish it were different is to waste our energy. So let's just separate it. Pain is information. The real challenge is what are we going to do with that information? Which brings us to the suffering part. Now, I started by saying, can you bridge to 10%? I started by saying there could be some resistance that bubbles up. This is that part. Because suffering is always self-created. Now that sucks. I resisted that for 30 years. And I resisted it because I didn't like it. Of course, I didn't like it. But suffering occurs at the intersection of where our resistance to what is combined with an abdication of our power to create change. It is caused by our stories of disempowerment. Things happen, we don't like them, but we don't take action to correct course, or we tell ourselves a story that essentially robs us of our power. But where we end up, where we benefit from getting to, is essentially in line with the serenity prayer. Now, I'll give you the serenity prayer. I know some people will know it, many people won't. The serenity prayer is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, for me, I'm not a religious person. I was brought up in a Christian household, but it's not my path. But that God part of that doesn't matter whether it's a Christian God, an Islamic God, a Hindu God, whether it's the greater power of the Buddhists, look to. There is a greater power somewhere, and it is asking for the ability to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So right now, I want to go through this idea of, well, how do we discern? How do we practice our awareness? How do we practice our discernment so that we can actually see the things we could change, see the things we cannot, and be able to know the difference? The fundamental problem is I think, we are phenomenal storytellers. Now, I think of myself here and my career. I'm quite vocal about the fact I spent 20 years in a career I hated. And I hated it every single day. I think maybe in 20 years there were fewer than 10 days where I felt really great at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of the day. I fell into my career and I hated it from day one. And I knew I hated it from day one. And yet I couldn't find my way out. And I spent a great many years blaming everybody and everything else. I remember saying to a colleague of mine, having a conversation with a colleague of mine where I blamed everybody from my sales manager to the CEO, to the shareholders, to capitalism in general, to geopolitical uncertainty. Everybody was to blame for the situation I was in, and there was nothing I could do about it. But every day, my heart told me I was doing the wrong thing. My emotional pain was so intense, I had to psych myself up every day to walk through the doors at work, to stand on the platform at East Croydon Station with hundreds of other people facing a train, cramming themselves in every morning. So the first mistake I made was not listening to my heart. The second mistake I made was thinking I couldn't do something about it. And there's a big reason why we think we can't do something about it. It's because all of the options are not, how am I trying to say this? The options available to us sometimes take a bit of uncovering. So for me, I was in a situation where everybody else I'd gone to university with, all of my friends, I had been conditioned into the direction I should be traveling. It should be a corporate job. It should end up paying well. There should be progression. Now, when I reconnect to who I am, I don't care about any of those things. I don't care about progression. I don't care about status. Don't care about money. Not in a way that would see you in a sales career, which is predicated on earning more money. So I was fundamentally allowing myself to be shepherded by society and culture into a path that was not for me. And the fear I felt at doing something different, breaking out of that, paralyzed me and stopped me seeing the options. So when we look at this is about how do we peel the stories away? Because as I said, I listed all the other people to blame. And a good friend of mine, Leah, she just sat there looking at me. She said, but you've created this. It's not capitalism. It's not the CEO. You chose to take this job. Your choice. Nobody forced you here. Now, at the time, I resisted that hard. It's like, this is not my fault. It is not my responsibility. The world should change to accommodate me. But guess what? It doesn't. And it isn't going to. So we come to the point where it's, well, how do I strip the stories away? How do I find my way to actually uncovering the options that are available to me? And I mentioned the 246 framework. There are four pillars. And for me, these are the measures as to how aligned we are living to our true self. And the first one, and this is the one that I think when we are suffering is the one we really need to focus on, is ownership. And ownership means, am I owning 100% of what is mine to own and putting down anything that I am carrying that is somebody else's to carry? Because when we take ownership, we take responsibility, we take accountability for the steps we are taking, for the choices we have made, the decisions we have taken, even when historically we've done it to stay safe. We still need to own those decisions, because until we own how we got to where we are throwing our power away. If we didn't create where we are, how do we create a way out of it? So ownership is paramount. It's also very, very difficult. It makes us feel terrible. So this is where the 6 essential elements come in. I'll quickly give you an overview of them, and then we'll work through them in relation to how I ended up managing my way out of my job. The 6 essential elements are compassion, curiosity, connection, awareness, acceptance, and intentional action. Fundamentally, we cannot create change without action. But if we leap into action too quickly, then we're essentially being very busy without a clear idea of what it is we're trying to create, what the options really are, and what the steps we have to take are. So with ownership, it's very difficult. So compassion is the first one. And compassion in this framework means a suspension of judgment. And that is inwardly focused in the first instance. We have compassion for ourselves. So I could sit there and say to myself, you made a load of decisions that fundamentally compromised who you are. Now I'm at a place where I could go further and say, I betrayed who I was because of the conditioning I had had. But I don't judge myself for that. I bring in my compassion and I go, okay, I had no other choice. I couldn't see another choice, is the point I'm making. The choices around us in every moment only become active when we become aware of them. So for me, I didn't realize the choices I had. I followed a path. I went the direction everybody else did. It was the safest route. That's okay. No judgment. Even though I was in pain for so many years, and there's part of my brain kicks in and says, but if you'd done this 20 years ago, you could have avoided all of that. Well, I couldn't have done this 20 years ago because I didn't. I am where I am. That is all. That's the only place any of us can be. Is what do we do now? How do we move forward? So compassion, no judgment. And when we take away our judgment of ourselves, we can be more honest. We can say, well, actually, I made this decision. And whilst I thought I've tried everything, actually, I haven't. But the reason I haven't tried everything is because maybe these are big things I need to do. Maybe they're not, maybe they're smaller, but they could be big. Maybe I need to leave this career. That's where I was in my own head. So compassion is incredibly important because it allows us to be honest with ourselves, to finally take ownership of everything that we have, all the decisions we have made to get us to where we are. Curiosity is the second one, because once we have highlighted all of those truths, it's an extension of non-judgment, because it's like, I'm not judging myself for that. I'm curious. That's interesting. What was it about that situation, that time in my life that made that the only option I felt I had, or made that the best option I had? Okay, well, that's interesting. Am I still in that place? Am I the same person? Well, let's go to the third, reconnection to who we really are. And I remind us of that pain point. Pain is just information. What is my pain telling me? What is it trying to guide me to or from? Am I so lost that I can't even find the points on the compass? Maybe. But if we come back to ourselves and listen, there's a reason I started all of this with a breath exercise. If we come back to a place of calm, of grounded self, the answers will start to come up. Now, I am not professing for a second that you sit down, you breathe for 20 seconds, and suddenly, ta-da, all the answers are there. That's not how this works. We've sort of been conditioned into thinking that there's a silver bullet somewhere, but we're not hunting werewolves. So silver bullets aren't going to work. They don't exist for the problems we have. This is practice over time. This is all of the elements, all of the pillars daily. How do I move myself a small amount every day? So we're doing the compassion, we're doing curiosity, we are getting reconnected. We are understanding our pain. We are learning what it is trying to tell us. We are connecting to ourselves more deeply. We are understanding whether it's guiding us away from something or it's guiding us to something. We get into the final three: awareness, acceptance, and intentional action. And this is the serenity prayer. It's a different order, but it is the serenity of prayer. Awareness, as we've said, is the stripping away of stories. What is the core truth I am left with? The core truth about me, the core truth about the situation I am in. We are not islands, right? So although I say everything is about us, of course there is impact from other people. There are consequences to other people's actions. There are consequences to our own. That awareness piece is, when I strip these stories away, what am I left with? And just as an aside, on the School of Humankind website, schoolofhumankind.com, if you go to that website, go to the faculty page, click my face, looks quite a lot like this. It will take you through to another page on which is a free download, the companion book of inalienable and often inconvenient truths. And this is 50 truths that I have come to. It's not new thinking, it's repackaged, millennia old wisdom. But these are the truths at the heart of things. Once we get to be able to see those truths, then that is the solid ground. We can start practicing our acceptance. Because all of this resistance, and I resisted this so hard for so long. There comes a point for me, or there came a point for me, where I recognized that my certainty and my resistance only ever resulted in more suffering. So the resistance would come up. I would say, I don't believe that. I believe this. And the result would be more of the same. And when you get to a point where I had a huge emotional breakdown 10 years ago. My wife was sort of mopping me up off the floor because I was done. I couldn't maintain the charade anymore. Once we do that, suddenly there are more options when we are true to who we are. So the awareness, strip the stories away. The acceptance is to that serenity prayer. Is this something I can change? Is whatever I am suffering with something I can change? And that is always going to be uncomfortable. This is not a path for people who want an easy path. That's why in that serenity prayer it says, grant me the courage to change the things I can, because people are used to us being who they think we are. We've created a life being who we think we are, who other people think we are. And when we change, when we take those courageous, bold steps to separate ourselves from our suffering, to end our suffering, we demonstrate to other people they have also compromised. And it is a deeply uncomfortable thing for me as an individual and also the people around me when my behavior changes, when my outlook changes, when I start to create something better for myself. I hold a mirror up to other people. And there are lots of people who do not like what they see, and they will resist my change. But this is my life. Any pain and suffering you are experiencing is yours. I'm not feeling it. You are. So we come back to this empowerment, disempowerment. Am I going to stay in pain because the people around me are made uncomfortable by my creating something new for myself? Or am I going to honor who I am, really? Now, I'm nearly 50. I seem to be fixated on that. I tell people I'm not bothered by my age, but it comes up a lot. It's taken me a very long time to get to this point. So I'm going to reiterate it as often as I talk about it. This is not a quick process. This is why we practice daily. These are 6 essential elements, the 4 pillars, 2 beliefs. And by doing so, by being willing to strip the stories away, to see what is true, to pose those ownership questions. What can I change? Can I change this in a small way? Is that going to give me what I want? Is it going to start ending my suffering? Or is this going to take something bigger that maybe I need a bit of a run up to? And it's going to upset people around me or unsettle the status quo that everybody has got into? Well, these are big questions that we have to ask ourselves. And it comes to these 4 pillars: ownership, authenticity, integrity, and self-love. So we've done the awareness, we've done the acceptance. We haven't done the acceptance. The second part of the acceptance is, what if we cannot change it? Now, there are consequences to every decision. This is one of the inalienable truths. There are always 2 types of consequence. There is the intended and there is the unintended. We cannot avoid either of those. If we are really deeply intentional about the actions we take, the decisions we take, we know they've come from an aligned, authentic, integrated place of integrity and self-love, then whatever the outcomes, we can deal with it. There will be the intent, some degree of intended outcome. I'm creating a life that I really want to live. There will be unintended consequences. And that might be, for me personally, I lose friends because they cannot come on the same journey as me. Now, that's a big thing to have to deal with. It absolutely requires us to connect to who we are. But as I said earlier, the pain and suffering I'm feeling, they're not. Nobody else is. Only I am. Now, it has ripple effects. My wife experienced it because I was so unhappy. She does like me to remind everybody that I was unhappy from a professional perspective and that my private life and my marriage and all that was excellent, which it was. But there's a ripple effect. People understand that things may not be going well. Interestingly, she was the only one who knew. Everybody else thought things were hunky-dory because I was acting my arse off every single day. So we get to this, what can I change? What can't I change? If I cannot change it, those unintended consequences, I may lose a friend forever. I may not be able to bring it back. I might not choose to, but even if I wanted to, I might not be able to. If I resist that truth, if that friendship is done, or any element of our life, if I cannot change it and I keep resisting that truth, I will remain in suffering. There's, suffering is the resistance of what is, combined with our abdication of our own power to change and now accept it. But the important thing to do is exhaust all avenues that are available to us. This is the ownership pillar again. This is, am I doing everything I can? Have I explored all avenues? Because if I have, then I can hold my hands up and say, I cannot change this. It might not be what I want, but I cannot change it. I have tried. I have exhausted all avenues. I will accept it and I will move on. And I may move on with a heavy heart. I may move on with pain. But pain is information. Pain in that instance may just be telling me that was something you really valued and it's come to an end. And that is painful. That is grief. All these things are part of being a human being, and grief changes over time. I'm not going to say time heals all wounds, but grief changes. Being able to discern those things puts the power of whether we continue suffering or not in our own hands, which is essentially the intentional action. There comes a point with all of these things. Yes, there are still things I can explore. There are other things within my ability to own that may affect this. Intentional action, what is that thing? Do that thing. It's not enough to plan to do it. It's not enough to identify what that action could be. We have to take the action. And that will be painful. Almost certainly. It'll be terrifying. It's one of these wonderful and terrible things about being a human being is the stuff we really want, the life we really want to live is almost always the other side of a really, really unsettling period and a terrifying series of decisions. But they'll be okay if we're coming back to our deepest intention. If we're practicing that reconnection to who we are, suspending judgment, owning everything that's ours, being authentically us, acting with self-love, acting with integrity, whatever happens, we can deal with. So, how are we feeling about pain and suffering? I've got faces I can see that are like going, oh, bloody hell. Excuse my language. Oh, I don't know how I'm feeling about this, Wyndham. Can we go back to breathing? Which is interesting because we've only done half. We've only done pain and suffering. And considering pain and suffering, did any of us really think the path to alleviating the suffering was going to be easy? It's going to be difficult. Of course it is. Look at what it's trying to alleviate. Well, there's an exchange required, and it's going to take some effort and some courage to step into that discomfort. But the peace and joy bit is never a constant. Just in the same way that pain and suffering are never a constant. Right at the beginning of this, we did, 2 minutes of breathing, not even 90 seconds of breathing. And in that 90 seconds, if your focus and attention was on your breath, was on your heart, there was no suffering. There was no pain. Because these things are not permanent. The same is true with peace and joy. They're not permanent. They're spikes that we have. And because they're fleeting and because they're sometimes unexpected, there's even greater joy in them. But that breath exercise is an example of how we can create peace. Almost instantly. We have this incredible, I'm not trained in breath work, but we have this incredible faculty available to us that lots of people say, oh, it's a hack, it's a biohack, it's this, it's that, it's the other. It's just how our systems work. If you extend your exhale longer than your inhale, you are stimulating the parasympathetic system of the body. And that is the rest and digest side of our body. So simply by taking 2 minutes to sit, get comfortable, feel the ground under your feet, feel the ground that you're sitting on, If you're sitting in a chair, feel the back against your back and breathe. Extend your out breath, brings you calm, creates calmness. And if you're doing that for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you have access. This is about empowerment. You have access to changing how you feel in any moment. The joy piece, huge amount of research on this about gratitude, and there is more research coming out about awe, and that these two emotions are rejuvenating, they are healing, they help us move through difficult times. Gratitude practices, I don't know whether either of you have or anybody watching has gratitude practices. I sometimes struggle with them. It feels a bit contrived. And then at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, it is contrived. But if it helps me feel better, why would I not contrive to do that? Why wouldn't I focus on the things that I have? One of the reasons we connect to our heart, and I talk about this, is an unfatigable part of our body. It never stops, ever, until the end. It never stops. We don't have to consciously ask it to do anything. We don't have to consciously ask any of our systems to do anything. I think one of the big highlights for me was highlights. Yeah, and it was an inflection point as well. I hated my body for most of the 20 years I was in my career. I wanted it to be different from how it was. I was carrying a lot more weight back then. I was drinking far too much. I was eating terrible foods. And I blamed my body. And then as part of my kind of healing journey or adventure, I got into yoga, and I had the realization that my body is the single most valuable thing I will ever own. And it is all mine. I know we live in a hideous time where body autonomy is no longer guaranteed in many places. So I say that with I understand that isn't the truth for everybody. But for all of us, our body is the single most valuable thing we will ever own. And when it starts breaking down, okay, that's cool, but it is still the most valuable thing we have. And having a moment while we're breathing, coming back, feeling our heart beating, feeling the points of our body that connect to the ground, try it. Offer yourself some gratitude, because wow, it's amazing the things that we can do. And even if we're sat at a place where they're going, I'm really struggling with that, your body is the vehicle in which you experience the world. Now, yes, our minds are super powerful, but they reside in our body. And even if bits of our body stop working as well as they used to, it is still this remarkable, incredible thing that we get to say what happens to most of the time, excluding those areas of the world where things are awful. So taking a moment to be grateful for that. I'm going to give you the obvious ones as well. Go for a walk. Walking, interestingly, I have a friend, a guy called Phil Banfield, who runs net walking events. So we go walking in the Surrey Hills and meet new people, have a chat, all that kind of stuff. And there's research that shows the part of the brain that is responsible for walking is also the part of the brain that is responsible for problem solving. So when we are stuck, when we are up against a brick wall, sat in our little offices or at our desks or in our homes, and we don't know what to do, go for a walk. Because the part of your brain that helps you walk is also working away in the background to come up with an idea to solve your problems. If you've got a pet, there's always joy in pets. There's always a moment where they just bring a smile to your face. If you don't have a pet, get one. And if you live with someone who's told you you can't have a pet, ignore that. Get a pet. All letters of complaint to Angela at School of Humankind. So that's kind of it. I said there's no silver bullets. I don't know what people come to these kind of events, what their expectations are. I know mine would have been somebody's going to solve my problem for me. I'm not, unfortunately. Well, arguably, unfortunately. I think there's enormous empowerment in the fact that it's on us, but we can absolutely do it if we're committed to the process. So that's it. I hope you have enjoyed this. Like I say, let this stuff, what's the word I'm looking for? Ruminate. See how it feels. There will be resistance to some of it. You don't have to accept any of it. But if you are currently in pain and suffering, separate those two things. The pain is information. It is directing you to or from something. Your role is to figure out what that is. The suffering part, that's all in our heads. And we have the ability to deal with it or accept it. At the point we genuinely accept it, we stop suffering. I was about just to sign off, but I am going to sign off. But before I do, have a look at the School of Humankind website. It's schoolofhumankind.com. Wander around that. There are loads of events coming up. We are just about to launch some paid courses as well, which are undeniably going to be amazing. We have a fundraiser as well, because at the moment, all of this is provided for free to you. All of our time is free. All of the effort that goes in behind the scenes is being borne by the two founders. And whilst we all want to continue helping people embrace a glorious life, that comes at a cost. Angela, nod if I'm right. Is there a link on the website to that? To the fundraiser? There's shortly going to be a link on the on the website to that. I fully appreciate. Well, I think we all appreciate that times are really challenging at the moment. But even if you can spare $1 or £1 or €1 or £10,000 or $10,000 or whatever it might be, we would be deeply grateful for any contributions anybody could make. Check out the events calendar. There are lots and lots and lots of events coming up. And if you are interested in me and what I do, my website is wyndhamjames.com. Please go and download the companion book of Inalienable and Often Inconvenient Truth. It's free, not because it's rubbish. It's free because I think it is fundamentally helps us get to a point where we go, all right, I know what I'm dealing with now. You can get that either from my website or the School of Humankind. But with that, I will leave you to your evenings. I wish you a peaceful and joyful few days. Oh, final thing, if you want to catch up on this, or you want to go over anything that's been on, this is going to be on YouTube, on the School of Humankind YouTube channel, some point in the next couple of days. As this recording is going to my cloud, I'm going to be the limiting factor. Anyway, I will leave you to your evening. I wish you a peaceful and joyful few days, and I will speak to you soon.